Alright, working on the Spiritbox cover here, and although you guys probably know how to go about those things quite well, I decided to jump into the early production stages for you to share the journey basically from nothing. I don't have any MIDI apart from Guitar Pro to the finished cover, which I haven't even done yet. So if we quickly look into the session here currently, that's what I got. I'm using the new GGD P5 library, which sounds freaking awesome, just bought it, and I'm using the Quake bass as well from my good friend CG Elwin, just to make it a little bit different and not use Gene bass all the time. So the way I go about constructing such covers from scratch, because there is no MIDI available on the internet, at least not that I was able to find it, for drums specifically, I got the guitar tablature in MIDI, Guitar Pro, and I imported it, and I dropped it into the bass track, and so here's how it sounds. And now with the drums, I basically go and program them literally as the song goes, so it takes the time, and I just go and make sure that I follow it as closely as I can. With the complicated polyrhythmics, I just grab the guitar track, copy it down to the drums, and follow the kick pattern, modifying it accordingly. Okay, so full transparency here. I'm not gonna use a one-take wonder because I'm not as proficient in modern metal playing. Unfortunately, I'm still learning. Yet I wanna maintain that real feel, and I got super freaking excited. This song just slaps, man. So good, so good. So I played it a bunch of times. If you look in here, I played it a bunch of times. Also, I used a camera in different angles so that it kind of looks cooler and not as boring for you to watch. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick the best bit. You get the real take, just a composite, which I think is the best because it still represents me as a musician, just not a one-take wonder as some of you are keen for. Hope that it's okay with you, man, and let me know, by the way, in the comments if I suck or not. Cheers. I spent a bunch of time editing those guitars, taking the best takes, and unfortunately I had to move a couple of things around just for tightness. Please forgive me for that. Hopefully that's okay with you. And there is an important bit to highlight, and that is Synth Production, because the song actually quite heavily relies on the atmosphere, which is kinda hidden, because it is created by some really slow sort of pad strings. I'm using Farlight for this, which was free during the pandemic, and it really works well for this. Check out this bit here as well. It's simple, it is melodic, but it is really important to recreate if you want to hit the atmosphere of the original track. My final duty is to quickly show you how the mix was constructed. I think this is very important. Starting with the drums. There is quite a bit going on. First of all, I'm using GGD P5, which I just started using. This is my first time, so I'm not even proficient in the library, but it's sounding really good straight away out of the box. So we got the kick, the snare, the overheads and the rooms, and they sound like this. Nice and smooth, and then I add and blend those samples quite a lot. It's quite a bit of sample reinforcement, and I'm using various brands for samples here. I'm using heavy compression on samples. almost always slow attack and fast release, and then I direct my kick in and kick samples into the kick bus, this here, and same with the snare, this go into the snare bus. There's quite a bit going on. For kick I'm using a distressor, clipping, limiting with this Kevin's limiter which has no controls, and then one of the important bits is this multi-band. It just adds more punch and more attack to the kick. So for the snare, I'm using the API absolutely slammed in parallel. Some clipping, some limiting similarly, and then the same sort of multi-band but with different bands. So it just gives more snap and more control as well. Then the whole drum mix is compressed with my outboard SSL compressor quite a little bit, not overboard. Looking at bass guitar. Nothing over the top. The whole bass thing goes into the bass bus with some and some expanding on the upper frequencies for more grit. Guitars, I've already mentioned that for guitars we EQ the DI before the amp, and that was the reason I could not record with my amp. I had to play with the plugin and then capture the DIs and then reamp, because this gives more opportunity to shape the tone into the amp. Please look one of my other videos which I covered this in detail. This is Buster's approach, highly respected. More clarity to the guitars and gets rid of that annoying whistle harsh frequency. All these things are really subtle, but they accumulate all together. And then on the guitar bus, I compress it as well. And I guess one last final thing before we wrap this up, I don't want to dwell on this for too long, is mix bus compression. And I use something quite cool here, which I learned from my good friend Kai, mixing engineer from Melbourne. He suggested me to try this thing for more modern metal sounding mix, and so here I'm gonna share it with you as well. I'm using two SSL bus compressors for this mix bus. The first SSL bus compressor is set up really subtly in order to create glue in the mix. 10 millisecond attack, auto release, 2-to-1, no filtering at all, and only touching the needle. But then the second compressor after this comes into play, and this compressor is set really aggressively. Fastest attack, fastest release, 4-to-1, but then this sidechain filter is set up to maybe 400 Hz. This allows to slam your remaining transients nicely, but using this sidechain filter also allows for the compressor basically to not fart out on the low-end heavy material like kicks or bass and sound a little bit more transparent. The mix is set to 100%, so this compressor is doing really heavy lifting, and this gives quite a bit of a modern tone. So I want to wrap it up here. I don't want to take too much of your time, but please let me know a couple of things. First, whether you liked the tone of this cover, of this mix, and whether you enjoyed it. And two, if you want to learn more about any of those aspects, and I'm more than happy to share, just shoot me questions in the comment section, and I'm always here to help. Until next time, cheers.